So, Melissa, like myself, we have very similar backgrounds. We have a background in broadcasting, we have three children, and we wear many hats in the community. Tell me about why you do that. Why there's so much that you do. So I'll have to read it all. Certified life coach. You are a personal trainer, holistic nutritionist, social media influencer. You are the VP of Business Development for the KW Titans. You've just recently started a new job, which we'll talk about. And you are, as I mentioned, a very passionate member of the community. Where do you get this drive? How do you do it all?
That's a good question. I don't know. And some days it's so funny. And I think it's probably like a personality trait. Some days I'm like, am I doing enough? Like, like you're still challenging yourself. Or am I doing a good job at wearing all these hats? I just am so driven by passion and showing up in my community. This community has done wonders for me in my career and I feel like it raised me into who I am right now. And so I want to do everything and anything I can to give back. But it's also really important for me, for my children to see that, it's important to do good. It's important to contribute. It's important to go above and beyond, and to put any energy that you have out there for other people. But one thing I have noticed, or I've had to really do, especially during this pandemic, is learn to slow down. Like the pandemic forced us all to slow down, right? And took away a lot of the things that we were doing. But it really showed me that it's equally important to show my kids about self-care and slowing down and spending time at home too. So I love wearing all the hats, but I do it for that reason. But also, I've learned a lot from doing that and maybe wearing too many hats at times.
So you mentioned that the pandemic gave us an opportunity to slow down, spend more time with our families, and really think about what's important in our lives and how we want to make a difference in our communities and our families themselves. It gives us an opportunity to sort of reconnect with what's happening in the world, and a lot has happened over the last 6-7 months. So for you as a mom to biracial children, tell me about some of the obstacles that you have faced even before this, and how maybe that's kind of heightened over the course of 2020.
I think the biggest change I've noticed is people wanting to learn or unlearn or be educated or talk more. I haven't noticed a change in the amount. If anything, I've been facing, since my first child was born 11 years ago, I started facing situations or being in scenarios where, because he didn't look like me, because he was biracial, that we were questioned. I would go shopping and people would ask me if he's my child, or I would be asked if I'm his nanny when I was younger, when I first had him. And it was really interesting for me because I was like, if you saw a blonde or a brunette mom with a redhead child, you wouldn't say, is that your child? You just wouldn't ask that. But because of the skin tone, I get that question. And it started to open a conversation at a very young age with my children then. So why do people ask that, mommy? Why do people think that you're not my mom? They're coloring and they have to choose 2 different colors of crayons when they're coloring our family. So this has been very apparent for me and a part of our lives since I had my first child. I've faced my own issues. As you know, I was in broadcast and I had an online show as well. And we did do a conversation around raising biracial children. And I actually took the video off of YouTube because there was so many negative comments and I was attacked. My children were attacked. The things they said about my children, like I could never imagine if they read it. People have come onto my Instagram and called my children names and pictures because they're African American descent. So I've experienced it, not forever, but since I've become a mom. And so that hasn't changed, like that part. It's not more, prevalent to me. But what I have noticed is it's now out there, cameras are on, more situations, more people are talking about it and more people are aware. So, I now have friends or individuals or strangers saying to me, kind of what you just said, like, how are you dealing with it? What have you faced? Or how can I learn to unlearn, or what have I done, or can I do better? One of my closest friends came to me and said, I'd love to sit down with you and learn how I can do better and how I can make sure that I'm not doing something, even subconsciously doing something based on my privilege. And so that has been the most drastic change, is seeing the opportunity for growth. But also what I've seen is a lot of people that it scared me that I didn't realize people thought the way they thought until social media has given them a keyboard and a screen to talk or share, you know, and talk about their beliefs that don't align with equality and what I believe and what I'm trying to raise my children to feel and believe and see. So it's been interesting, but like I said, I think it's not more I've just seen a change in the people around me.
So you've chosen, and I remember the incident you're talking about on your social media feed. You've chosen to be very transparent about what you've gone through. Was the response more positive or more negative online? I want to hope that your response to me right now is going to be, well, it was way more positive than it was negative.
It was 100% more positive, and I think uh, I was overwhelmed with love and support during that situation. I started a little movement at that point called Love Warriors, and I shared a quote, and hundreds of people from our social channel shared it and reshared the story and stood up with me. But at the same time, I was still shocked by some responses. Like I definitely had some people say, let it go. Why bring attention to it? You're just making a bigger deal of it. And I found that shocked me because if your child was bullied at school, you wouldn't just let it go. This isn't something you just let go. You don't just let that bully get away with it. And for some reason, it just shocks me that someone says around racism, don't give them attention, just let it go. And that, I can almost feel my like heat boiling up. Like that got me upset. That hurt me because these were people that knew me, and I felt, you know, you would want to stand up with me, and letting go isn't an option. I didn't even think of that as being an option. So my job as a parent is to fight for my children. And that's what I think about every day. And I think about somebody who said that to me, who else would you say that to? Right. And that's, that was kind of the only shock that I faced of it, is that I think that let it go concept, which we can't do that.
No.
Can't let it go.
Speaking of which, I'd love to know, you know, you in the last 11 years, what outlets have you found to sort of prepare and educate yourself for what your children are going through and will inevitably go through in the future? How, you know, as a white woman asking a white woman, how can I educate myself, and what outlets have you found useful?
I think first and foremost, it was talking to family members of my partner at that time, his mother, sister, hearing their stories, listening to his stories, understanding how they process their experience and what I could do better to help my children when they're in that experience, or to educate them around those experiences. Then a ton of reading. I definitely went into a ton of reading. And you know what's interesting is I always would have said, I obviously don't feel like I have any racial or racist tendencies within me, but what I didn't realize was the importance of not just saying I'm not a racist, it's about being an anti-racist and the power behind that. So even me in my time, I've become more educated about the need to change, to look within, like where do I have fears that might have been instilled with me as a child, or being raised in a predominantly white community. You know, what things do I have to be more aware of? I didn't even think about, you know, my niece has really awesome, curly, crazy, awesome hair, and people touch it and she hates that, you know, and that was just one thing that I would have never even thought about until being in this dynamic. And it's really just being more observant, forcing myself to be educated, and never to never stop learning, and to always challenge myself to unlearn things that might be within me, not like from my own raising.
At Heartbeats 8, we talk about, you know, stand up, push back, speak out. Have you gotten to a place where you're comfortable doing that now? You know, if you saw something that was happening, not just to your children, to someone else, would you be able to stand up and say, look, no, this isn't okay? Because that's a point where we have to teach ourselves to become uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
Would you say that you're there now? You're comfortable doing that?
So being comfortable, being uncomfortable, right? And I would say yes and no, if I'm being so honest. I've had people close in my life that I've had to stand up and say, what you just said around my child, I can't allow. I can't allow you to think that. And I need you to hear me say now what you just said out loud, and how that sounds to somebody, that a mother that has Black children, a mother who's raising children in already a society that's full of prejudice and negative thoughts around them just because of their color. So I definitely have the strength to do that. But at times I will find that I'm almost shocked. I've been in situations where somebody has said something and I'm shocked that they even are saying that or it came out of their mouth. And I don't think that they've even realized it. And I almost get uncomfortable myself that I don't even know what to say to them. So there's been points where it's been both, like that I'm very confident and I'm able to do it. But there's also been other times where I'm floored that I don't even know what to say. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's a learning process, and it's a challenge for us, especially if you are in a place of white privilege, that we have to stand up and we have to make noise. As soon as I got my Heartbeats Hate sign, it was out on our front porch, and there's little steps. And so that's the other thing that's important, is that people are like, it's really big to all of a sudden be like, hey, I'm don't do that, or stop saying this, or whatever, and going out there and attacking other people. I like to approach things from a really kind and understanding place. So if somebody, says something, I'd rather softly or gently navigate them to unlearning that thought or navigating away from it, as opposed to hey, you're a jerk. You know what I mean? Going that extreme. Mm-hmm. And that takes time. And I think it's important that if you're going to be an anti-racist, that you are patient and that you will slowly build the confidence to be able to be loud and out there voicing your opinion.
You mentioned the sign outside, and it's true. I mean, I have mine out front of my house as well, but I did have friends who said they weren't comfortable doing that because they were afraid their homes would be vandalized. So something as simple as putting out a sign saying, this is what I believe and what I represent, is sometimes uncomfortable.
Well, and I understand where those fears come from, right? I understand, because there is people, there's the bad apples in every situation that are causing harm in our community. I always look at it that it's that Mr. Rogers saying that when bad things are happening, you're always going to look around and finding the good stuff that's happening, right? So even if somebody did vandalize my house because of that, I guarantee you this community would rally around me to clean my house up and support me. Mm-hmm. So that's the way you have to think about it, especially when you're standing up for a human, another human.
Exactly. And that's why when we were talking earlier about that social media post, I was like, I pray that the good outweighed the bad, because at the end of the day, it usually does, right?
Yep,
especially because when we become a voice, we usually end up banding together with other voices, so you can drown out the darkness, I guess. Yeah. We talked a bit about cyberbullying, and I'm curious, do you allow your children to use social media? And if not, when you do decide to allow them, how will you prepare them for that?
Yeah. So when I was in television, we actually did a fair amount of discussions with an online expert, and she had this company called Binary Tattoo, and she teaches children how to navigate. And she talks about, she just educated me so much. And I learned about COPPA, which is the Canadian Online Policing Association. And so I've been so blessed to know what I know. Mm-hmm. Also being in social media myself, I'm able to talk to my children a little bit more. And they've experienced more social exposure firsthand. So it's been a conversation in our family for quite some time. Mm-hmm. I did have my son, who's 11, come to me and say all of his buddies are on Instagram, and asked to get his own Instagram. And the first thing I was able to use was, well, you're not allowed to until you're 13 legally. So, and he's very by the book. So that covered my butt. But I said to him, I would like to know why he wants it, and how, and I need to know if he even understands the safety. And he actually wrote me a 1-pager on why he wanted it, how he would keep himself safe, what were the risks, and what would he do if he faced any of those risks. And I think that that's the first part with engaging your children and moving them into the social space, is education and open conversation. And that's hard because some parents, they don't have that kind of easy conversation with their kids, or their kids push back on those kind of conversations. So I'm not saying it's easy, mm-hmm. but it is key. I think the conversations, understanding what is that new documentary that just came out? It's not Social Dilemma, is it?
Yes.
Yeah. That was freaky.
I know.
But I think it's important for them to watch that. And I know I had somebody say that their child just totally disengaged because they were like, if I buy into this, my parents are going to take away my social media. So you've got to do that in like a gentle way of, hey, this really cool movie came out. And I'm not saying I'm taking your social media. And I'm not saying that, you've got to really be with that parent where you're kind of like, I'm not putting the cage around you, because then kids just shut off. But it's about open education and open communication, and just give this a chance and let's talk about it after. Like, what do you feel about this? And what have you noticed online, or what do you experience? And I think the open conversation is key, and then following like the rules also kind of helps.
Well, thank you for joining me today and spending time with me talking about some tough conversations and some tough topics. I really appreciate your honesty and your authenticity today, because I feel like a lot of people will benefit from this.
Thank
Going
you.
forward, is there anything that you think we missed that you wanted to cover?
I think, and this is always a message I try to leave any conversation with, is what I've said numerous times through this whole chat, is this concept of gentleness and kindness. One, within yourself, understanding that we are in a wild time and we need to be gentle with ourselves. And whether it be the conversation we had about Black Lives Matter and being gentle with yourself as you're learning and unlearning, getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, all of that is going to take time. Being home in a pandemic, working through a pandemic, parenting, it's help, like self-care, be gentle. And then the second one is being kind to others, because however they're choosing to proceed through this pandemic, however they're choosing to, act within their family dynamic or externally, however they're choosing to experience this, it's for the best, for their better good. It's for their situation. And so there's, I think, such an importance that should be placed on being kind right now to others as they're going through this, because no one's doing anything to hurt anybody else. They're doing it for what they can handle, or what they're doing, or what works for them. So, you might not align or believe in what somebody's doing right now, but trying to pull away from judgment and pushing forward kindness right now, I think is really important. And if I was to leave with anything, it's just this reminder of gentle and kindness for yourself and for other people.